Hi, Matthew. And I guess this is the second episode of what we're provisionally calling the Existential Files.
Yes, and what people are calling shit.
Yeah, a couple of tossers.
If I remember correctly, that we got to the end of the last one, and we had talked about start again. We went round the houses as one does, and at some point we were then talking about the nature of science, and I think we were kind of in that space of what science is capable of, the nature of science. Is it built to deal with the kind of interesting questions in life? And I think, at least you're suggesting that maybe it's limited. You think it's maybe limited?
It's certainly not capable of answering some questions, yeah. I mean, and realistically, why should it be? I mean, if I've got a microscope, I can't complain at the microscope because it can't, show me Mars.
Fine.
And your tool is only going to be useful for certain questions. And science isn't a tool that we can apply to every question. And we can't, it's not a criticism of science.
Sure. And I think then, I feel, or whatever the right word would be, that if we wanted to cut to the chase, and I hope, that sense is the second episode and we're done, because it'll maybe open up the door to bigger and a variety of questions. The interesting questions fall within that general underlying thing of what's the point? What's it all about? Why are we here? Why does the universe exist as opposed to not exist? What we should do with our daily lives, given all that, etc., which we did touch upon in the last one, because we started with this idea, well, the universe is absurd, and therefore, if it's all meaningless, how do we decide what's worth doing? And we would feel that maybe science, or at least you're articulating that science is not, in many cases, geared up for that kind of set of questions. I
mean, let's put it this way. Science can give us information that we can use in evaluating that question or those questions. So, for example, I mean, evolution is a scientific question, and Darwin's, evolution by natural selection is a scientific theory. And we can look at that and evolution is one of the prongs by which, I come to the conclusion that everything's pointless. So it isn't that science is useless or isn't any good or whatever, but science, I don't think there's a scientific answer to some of these questions that we're looking at, but science can inform our thinking.
Yes.
Is how I see it.
And therefore, so the word from that I was drawn to was conclusions. So science can help us gather data, gather information to help us towards drawing conclusions. And you were saying the conclusion you've come to, based upon at least some exploration of that, is that everything's pointless. And is the question then that how we interpret the data, how we interpret what's going on around us, is not necessarily a scientific question. That's where it comes back to, well, in our context, humans making a judgment, making an inference, drawing a conclusion based upon, let's face it, incomplete data. Well,
I mean, the way I see it is that although my training is as a scientist, so I'm a psychologist, PhD in psychology, ultimately I find myself finding great sympathy with existentialism. And I think existentialism is saying, in a meaningless universe where everything is pointless, where your existence was not designed, where you're not important, doesn't matter if you go up, doesn't matter if you go down, left or right, how do you cope with that? And I think that's not a scientific question.
A philosophical question?
An existential question.
Okay. Go on.
I mean, because again, this is something that, we're going to talk about potentially quite a lot, is that it's not true for animals, for example. So existential questions don't apply to animals. Existential questions don't apply to black holes. And it's a uniquely human position to be in.
And why is that?
Because human beings are slightly different things from black holes and animals. the nature of what it is to be a human being. And again, I mean, it's not something I can answer in one thing. So we're gonna talk about it in over weeks and months or whatever.
Well, maybe one of our endpoints here will be we'll get all of this somehow condensed into 140 characters or less. We'll put it out as a tweet. Job done.
Well, I mean, I can do that. I mean, you don't exist. I mean, you don't exist. But the fact that you don't exist and I don't exist, the fact that we are illusory beings that
so shit, we actually are now at -2 then. So we started at 0.
Well,
we didn't kill ourselves, but we've just made ourselves not exist.
Well, it's like, I mean, for example, if you're in a cave and I say hello and I hear more hello, 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 hello. You know, is there one person? Is there 0 people? Are we an echo?
But okay, so the question there is, do the echoes exist? And you're saying in that context, the echoes don't exist.
Well,
I would argue, at least my gut feeling is to say, well, they exist as echoes.
All right. The analogy I like, for example, is the Necker cube.
Yeah. Okay. Do we need to describe that so people know?
Okay.
I suppose we'll pause for a second as people Google Necker cube.
Google the Wikipedia page. Wikipedia page is very good for a Necker cube.
Very good. Okay.
So a Necker cube is a geometric illustration that when you look at it, it appears to come out to the page or go into the page. It has one or the other, but you cannot perceive both ways of doing it at the same time.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that there is no cube coming out. There is no cube coming in. That's an illusion. It's a geometric one-dimensional figure that is, or two-dimensional figure that is on a flat page. And for me, I mean, we're getting to the end of the story rather than starting at the beginning. But for me, the end of the story is that human beings are illusory, neither one projection body, neither one projection mind, though we have the appearance of both. Illusory.
And breathe. Hold a second. Let me just take all this in. So we're illusory. All aspects of ourselves are illusory.
Well, if in sense of, I'm not saying we don't have a body. The body
I'm not saying that.
The body is a physical thing, but to what extent our body is us, I don't entirely agree that the body is us.
Okay.
Though we are entirely dependent upon the body.
And who's the we in this? Who's the us in this?
I mean, again, what you're trying to do, I cannot tell this story in 140 characters.
Okay, well, that's why we're doing a podcast, and we're here for however long it's going to take us to keep going while we still enjoy doing it. I mean, don't feel okay. So loosen up a little bit, Louie. We don't need to get to the answer here. So in some ways, you're teasing us with some sense of where this thinking has got you. So there'll be a point when the time is right for us to get back to explore this idea. Okay, you said way back in what appears to be episode 2 that there's something about the illusory essence of our body, our mind, this what you call projection of it, but it's not us. So somewhere, I guess that's a big effing question or big set of things you're saying that it's going to take a time to get our heads around. Well,
sure.
At the very least, then, the question that came to my mind. So, in those kinds of ways of describing it, you said that's not us. We. There's an us and a we. You use. What do you mean by the us and the we in that context?
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Even though I see us as illusory beings, we still have an existential question to deal with, right? So it doesn't matter. I mean, for example, some existentialists describe it as no excuse. So there is no excuse that you can call upon to diminish your existential responsibility.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter whether you're an illusory being, you still have to deal as an existential being, you still have to deal with those existential questions. And that's, I think, what we're left with, regardless of any of the other conclusions we come to. We still have to live. We still have to put one foot in front of the other.
Absolutely.
Even killing ourselves is an action.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, coming to these conclusions and then communicating them and communicating with other beings who are interested in their nature, that's an interesting thing. May or may not help other people.
Yep.
Kind of motivates me to get out of bed in the morning.
Absolutely. And that's it, isn't it? This idea. And so one way I've approached this, the one reason why we are having these conversations now, having spent a number of years apart, as it were, and been drawn back to say, okay, we're coming to some similar questions, or we have been exploring them from different. Okay, Matthew, slow down. When I'm talking about these things, which I get quite passionate about and really want to explore, I can hear myself speed up with the way I speak. So I apologize. So forgive me for that one. I'll do my best to slow down. So we've both really come to the same place or slightly different places through different routes. And where I'm at is, like, say, that same, what you would call existential question is, no matter what your take on the world is, no matter what your worldview, religious point of view, you're faced with the question of, you wake up each morning, whatever that might mean, but you have some sensory existence of waking up and taking part in what appears to be this world around us. And at some point, that experience will cease to be, i.e. the day you die.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens beyond that. Many of us feel that that's it, oblivion. There are large structures of thought, usually religions, that will say, after you die, this happens. Whatever that's the case, we won't know until we die. We're still faced with that existential question of, what do we do with each day ahead of us? Is that what you would say in terms of that existential question?
Yep, definitely.
So
it's definitely one of them.
Yes. Oh, well, it's one that faces us all, no matter what your take is, no matter what you think is going on.
Sure.
You have to do, you either do something or you don't do something.
But
even
even
if you don't do something, is doing something.
Even
it's choosing to do nothing, isn't it? Which is essentially sitting on your ass on a sofa, talking to somebody else who is walking around his house in another part of the country, another part of the world, asking the same kinds of questions, and either coming to different conclusions or just still exploring possibilities. So that's one sense is, whilst I think at the moment we are both coming to different conclusions, I suspect we're also very open to exploring different points of view, because we're not saying we have the answers. Or Louie, are you saying you have the answer?
Well, I mean, I'm saying that.
And the answer is going to be, there is no answer.
Well, it's not that there's no answer. I mean, the thing is that the nature of the universe, the nature of existence actually seems pretty clear to me in some ways.
Go on.
So I mean, again, it's not something I can describe in 140 characters. I mean,
we're not asking you to. I was joking about that. We will speak for a bit. There'll be a natural break, and then we'll carry on, and we'll break it down for people. And in 20 years' time, we'll either still be discussing the same thing, and the world will have moved on, and we'll all be doing this with lunar jetpacks on. Which by now, didn't we get promised them by now? We're what in 2017?
Jetpacks.
I watched Back to the Future. Was it 2015 they went to? We were be having hoverboards. We were going to be flying cars. We've been duped.
So you're saying the future is a letdown?
Not at all. I'm not saying that. It's not what was predicted by those kinds of programs or films.
We have.
But having said that, Back to the Future is probably one of my favourite films.
It's not a bad film.
It's not a bad one.
It's not a bad one.
It's in my top 10. It's probably in your top 500.
It's not a bad film.
Okay, that's our review.
Yeah,
it's not. Those of you who haven't watched it, it's not a bad film.
It's nae bad, as they say in Scotland.
It's nae bad, and you could be. Okay, that's our quick review of that film. We may come back to that movie at some point, but still,
we do interject with pop culture, reviews.
Absolutely, every so often you've got to sort of dig deep for them. You've got to wade through some crap going on till you get there. But anyway, if nothing else, we'll go and watch Back to the Future.
Right.
So I was going to say that we may still be talking about this in a year's time, 5 years' time, whether or not anybody else is tuning in and wanting to listen to this stuff, because that's not our motivation for doing it primarily. There must be something about us wanting to record what we're talking about and share it, but that's not necessarily to, listen to us guys, what we're talking about. We are genuinely interested in these, these effing questions, because they are fundamental to how you then explore what you do with those existential ideas of, you wake up each morning, what's worth doing today? Today is a Monday. I, in quotes, should be working, and that should involve me accessing emails, responding to student inquiries, there's marking in the queue that needs to be done, student preparation, stuff I need to be transferring from one part of Blackboard to another part of Blackboard. Other virtual learning environments are available. etc., etc., etc. And I'm choosing to talk to you. What does that say about me?
Well, I mean, part of that is because you're interested in this question, and so that's you're prioritizing your interests, aren't you?
Absolutely, and it's really hard to prioritize with those that you do feel passionate about, and they're so important because they're more important than all that other stuff. Yet you're faced with those demands and requirements and nudges and pushes and prods from the environment around you to say, you signed up for this job X number of years ago. We pay you to do this stuff. You need to do this stuff according to these rules. And if you don't, there will be consequences. And we're often a little bit afraid to discover what those consequences might be, because I better keep doing it. Got to get my marketing on time. Got to do this. And in fact, okay, I'll have another little story here and then pass it back to you to see what your thoughts about this. One of the many catalysts of my kind of recent foray into this sort of set of questions again and again and again is, interestingly, the death of A. Gill. So for those who don't know the name, he was a journalist. He was a restaurant critic in the UK primarily, and a novelist probably. Again, you'll search A. Gill, you'll discover something about him. You'll see some obituaries, because it was one of his obituaries, because he died in 2016, one of the number of people who died in that year, obviously quite a lot of so-called, let's use the word, celebrity deaths, folks. And he's one that kind of noticed that had an obituary. There was a few paragraphs, and it does remind you of, when it gets to that final point and people are reviewing your life as an individual, what would you like to be remembered for? And at the time I was thinking, do I want to be remembered for, I got my marking done on time? Because that was the thing that I was thinking, I've got marking to do, it needs to be done by a certain date, and it's causing me some stress if it's not getting done. And that's been one of the catalysts for saying, what do we want to be remembered for? Or forgotten about, or what's worth doing with this blink of an eye life we have, if we compare to the huge range of time the universe exists and the world exists within it. So that's the existential question I face every morning, and I'm trying to explore different ways of how I go about doing that. Over to you, Louie.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there personally. I must admit, I think you're slightly behind me, not in, I mean, when I first had my existential break and I had a bit of I gave up parapsychology and I quit science almost, I think those questions, which I equated with ego. Yeah. So ego lashes out, grabs at the wall as you're falling into the pit, and your fingers crawl down the wall, and you dig them in, and you're trying to stop your annihilation, and definitely I understand that. I must admit, now at the position I'm in, I'm much less egotistical. So I mean, since I don't really believe in Louie as a thing, as a real thing, I'm not massively egotistical about a non-existent being inside me. Whether we can get you to that stage, I don't know. But no, it's a fair question.
Come on, you could do better than that. Carry on, keep going. You're saying, okay, you say this illusory, back to this idea of illusory being of Louie, the illusory being of Matt, okay, and I'm faced with this idea, yes, it is ego asking this question, saying, what should I, and in many ways, this singular I is that representation of ego, that part of us which is faced with, I've got to do something with these limbs and with this fleshy thing around me that I'm kind of seemingly responsible for. And I seem to have some kind of experience of, let's use the word consciousness. It could be apparent free will. It could be actual free will, whatever. Discuss about that. There's some sense of I have some responsibility of what I do today.
Well, you certainly have.
What do I use as my guiding principle? Do I use it as, okay, well, I'll do what I'm expected to do, or should I do what the fuck I want?
Okay, I mean, the fact is that there is no answer to this question that's going to satisfy you. There is no book, a rule. The universe doesn't come with a rule book, and no one's going to come and give you a rule book which says you should always prioritize your own ego over anything else. That choice is personal. I'm not, for me, what I find the existential question is that, you stand there with no ally. Your biology is not your ally. Your mind is not your ally. You know, and you stand in the raw moment of the present with the total volitional power. A black hole cannot choose what to do in the next moment. The universe cannot choose to do what it wants in the next moment. But you can choose what to do in the next moment. And I think that's an immensely scary proposition.
Why is it scary? And why is it different then that I can choose, but the rest of the universe, anything other than humans can't?
Well,
in your opinion?
Well, I mean, you know, well, black holes can't choose what to do. The universe cannot choose what to do. I mean, I think that's pretty.
But we're part of the universe.
We
I'm
are
part of the universe. So why can the universe not choose, but I can? Why is it that I can, but the universe can't? What's different about me compared to the rest of the universe? Well,
I mean, again, this is, as I say, this is something that I can't answer to you in a very simple way.
Well, let's start the answer though. Why are we doing that? We're just going to chew it over and then go, okay, let's. Let's go back to the next disc then, and we're going to listen to some Desmond Dekker over here, and we've got some mod for you mod fans later on. With a bit of the Who, but if you're a real Beatles fan, what's the latest pop tunes? Yeah, we can do a bit of that. We can then pause on this and play some tunes and come back to it, smoke some doobies as it were, and just chew it over. But part of what we're doing here is surely trying to get a better understanding rather than do something else, because this is one of our choices. This is, you know, every utterance that I say is a choice.
Sure. Well, then the way I do it when I'm thinking about these things is I triangulate position. So let's pick a starting point, which is, say, evolution, because evolution, for example, is the one piece of information that can tell us that everything is pointless. We don't need to know that there's an external universe out there. And I know you and I were talking about Hitchhiker's Guide or Dirk Gently the other day. And, you know, in one of the Hitchhiker's Guide stories, you know, there's a planet which is, you know, the rest of the galaxy hides them from so they can't see any other stars. So they don't know that there's a universe external to them. And, you know, if we couldn't see other stars, if we didn't know the extent of the universe, evolution would still inform us that everything is pointless. So evolution is a good starting place if you want to discuss, you know, some of the existential questions.
Okay, shall we start? Does that suggest then, and again, maybe I'm going to be the person who brings a sense of, oh, what's the time check? Or am I doing a wrong thing here, Louie? What are your thoughts on me every so often thinking, oh, we're at a point now, we have an edit point, and we go, okay, let's pause there. So thanks for listening, folks, you know. Go and do other things, and then rejoin us when you feel the time is right, and we'll carry on that conversation.
I'm happy to do whatever anybody wants.
So it's your time to vote at home, folks. So I think it feels like, given we're talking about it, let's pause. We've talked about evolution. That's where we're at now. We're going to talk about this idea of evolution, what that means, and particularly, you're saying it's a good starting point for exploring.
I think if what evolution tells us is that our existence, the existence of our species was not designed, that we were not, nobody said, hey, let's create human beings. Evolution is not a process that produces human beings. And therefore, our existence is completely happenstance. And if our existence, is happenstance, no one gives a shit what we do.
Okay. And on that bombshell, folks, we shall pause and we'll join you again in episode 3. Is that okay?
Sounds good to me.